Hi guys, it is Mandy from Mandyleeplays, and in this video, I'm going to share with you my recommendations for JRPGs when it comes to the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5. So without further ado, let's get into the video. The era of PlayStation 2 was considered the golden era of JRPGs, but it's sad to see that now in our modern era, the PlayStation 5 is not really the place to be for JRPGs, but my PlayStation does come in clutch when a game is not coming out on the Switch or it's very underpowered on the Switch. I tend to just buy it for the PlayStation if they have that available. Now, the first game on the list is Tales to Arise. So this is my first Tales game and I enjoyed it so much. I love the combat, the characters, and the world just looked very beautiful. For the story, it's not really groundbreaking. It does a lot of the conventions that you see in many JRPGs, but I really did enjoy it, mainly because the characters, in my opinion, they're really written well and they were entertaining. I loved hearing the banter between the characters because they're just very funny and cute, and I love them. The downside is though, the world building in this game is pretty meh. Like, I wasn't as invested into the world as I was into the characters. It was okay, but I found myself loving the characters way more. Hoodle is the best. Hoodle is this little owl that's so freaking adorable, and I actually did this side quest where you have to collect all the different Hoodles or owls in the land, and I actually completed it. While the game is known for being an action RPG, compared to the other Tales games, this game got an overhaul in gameplay. One of these big changes are giving the players the ability to evade attacks, and also giving them a chance to counterattack as well. This fun new gameplay changes the factors of the player's input and makes it a lot more flashy. I'm very simple when it comes to gameplay. I like flashy attacks, and if I see it a lot, I tend to like it a lot. But it's not all just flashy attacks. There is some depth and strategy to the gameplay. You can't just bum rush it through it all. So you do have to think about your strategy and what characters you have in your party. A good example of the gameplay making you think is the inclusion of a shield gauge. If you manage to whittle it down to 0, the enemy will be in what is called a break stage, which is basically shorthand for treat that enemy like a piñata and do as much damage as could be done. And I also love that you could tag team with another character and do a unique attack that does a lot of damage as well. My favorites are anything with Rinwall because she is a mage, so all of her combo attacks do a lot of damage and it looks very pretty. And overall, the gameplay is just very fun and fluid. It's not like those other action RPGs where you kind of go into this mode of mowing down enemies. So I highly recommend you guys check out this game because the gameplay is good, the characters are fun, and it's just a beautiful world, and the soundtrack too is also very nice. Now onto a game that most of you are probably familiar with, and that is Final Fantasy Remake and Rebirth, if you finished Remake already. Now, I know a lot of you guys know what Final Fantasy is, but for those of you who don't know, Final Fantasy VII is one of the most popular Final Fantasy games, and they started to release a remake for it. Now, it's coming up in different parts. The first part is Remake, the second part is Rebirth, and we don't know the title of the third part. So they're basically telling the story from Final Fantasy VII with a different twist. Normally, I do not recommend games that are not finished, but this one is a special exception. Final Fantasy VII Remake, as much as I love to rip on it for being a cash cow, so even with my gripes, it's still a great game, and the remake is another way for Square to expand the story that they couldn't in the past. I love that the remake takes advantage of this opportunity to fill in those blanks of the original Final Fantasy VII story. Now, this game is split into 3 parts. The first one covers Midgard and all the drama and politics revolving there, and then the second part, Rebirth, covers all of the area outside of Midgard that lead into this climactic scene, and we don't know anything about the third one, but it's probably gonna wrap up the trilogy. The gameplay has taken a swift departure from the original Final Fantasy VII game, which a lot of fans don't really like. Honestly speaking, I don't mind the gameplay, but I do understand why more traditional Final Fantasy fans would have loved a return to turn-based combat, especially since it was in the original. But alas, in the remake is different. What makes this gameplay really addicting is the materia system. The materia system in Final Fantasy VII is the best. I love that these materias could help you customize a character, so they're not only slotted into a healer role or a fighter role. Every character has the potential to do mostly any spells. Now, some characters are more adept to it, like Aerith is better at healing, So the materia system is very cool and customizable, and I love that since the gameplay has changed a lot, they kept in the materia system, because honestly it would be really difficult without it. Now the characters themselves are pretty much how I imagine them, though Aerith I'm not really a big fan of. I feel like she's radiating this manic pixie dream girl kind of vibe, which is probably the point, but I don't like it. But the other characters, especially Tifa, I love. So overall, I love how they're expanding the story and the different characters. It is a great game to have in your collection, and by the time you finish it and play Rebirth, maybe there'll be some news of the third game down the line. Who knows? Alright, now to the next game, and that is Kingdom Hearts. Now the Kingdom Hearts series is very dear to me. I love it, and I love the lore and stories surrounding it. But if you guys don't know, Kingdom Hearts is basically a mixture of Disney and Square Enix titles put together with its own story. Now, I won't go too nitty-gritty with what order you should play and story elements, because honestly it deserves its own video for that. Now, I put the Kingdom Hearts series instead of a specific game, mainly because nowadays you could buy a package that has all the games. And another good thing about all the games being consolidated in one place, the story actually makes sense and it's not as convoluted as it was years ago. Now, the story of Kingdom Hearts is still convoluted and doesn't make sense at some points, but it's easier now than ever to get immersed into the series. As for gameplay, Kingdom Hearts is an action RPG where you control Zora for most of the game. And as I said in the beginning, you have original characters mixed with Disney characters mixed with Final Fantasy characters. So what started as a funny goof of putting Disney characters and Final Fantasy characters turned into this whole magical series, which I love. The series takes place across many different Disney worlds, and your job at first is to clear the Heartless, but things are not that simple and clean, are they? And in the second game, because reasons I'm not going to get into, you clear out nobodies. But not only that, you get to help various Final Fantasy characters like Cloud, Squall, and Tifa, and some other Square IPs like the people from The World Ends With You, which is actually funny enough, that's how I got into The World Ends With You, is because I saw it in a Kingdom Hearts game. So basically it's this big hodgepodge of different universes meshed into one. Now Kingdom Hearts 2 is my favorite, mainly because the gameplay is so smooth and fun. Now the other ones are smooth and fun, but 2 in my opinion has the perfect mixture of gameplay, and the story in 2 is one of my favorites. Now there are different gimmicks to each game, like the dry forms, or in Birth by Sleep is the shot logs, or in more modern Kingdom Hearts games is the flow motion system. So each of them has their unique take on the combat, though I feel like Kingdom Hearts 2 was the perfect one. Now you can find all the games into one disc for about $50, which is a steal, and I highly recommend you guys check it out. Alright, next game on the list is Yakuza 0. Yakuza 0 is what I like to call the perfect prequel. It does everything a prequel should do and then some. But I do want to get into the mainline games, so don't get me wrong. I will love to get into the series, especially Like a Dragon and Infinite Wealth. But besides that, in a vacuum, Yakuza 0 could stand on its own, delivering a very good story, gameplay that has you hooked, and other mechanics that make the game just fun. Now this story sets up the 2 characters that are pivotal in the Yakuza series, that being Kazuma Kiryu, the Dragon of Dojima, and Goro Majima, the Mad Dog of Shimano. But not only that, you get to control both of the characters, so you get to see their own journeys from where they started to where they're going. Especially the character Majima. He has a really interesting character arc, and he changes the most personality-wise. And both of them are drawn into a bitter conflict between various Yakuza factions. Now all of this fighting is because of an empty lot, which is very sought after because it's a little plot of land in the middle of Kamurocho. Now this also showcases a huge power struggle that is really showing in their inner workings when it comes to the Yakuza. This is starkly contrast into the vibe of the game. The vibes are very funny and happy, but there are deep issues going on behind the scenes. I feel like Yakuza does a really good job with having fun moments, but really hitting hard for those impactful emotional moments. As for gameplay, this is more of a beat 'em up style where you gotta beat people up and you have different attacks that you could upgrade down the line. Now this game has a very satisfying gameplay loop when it comes to beating up your enemies. I'm usually not that big into beat 'em ups or fighters, but I found the gameplay very simple and fun. And I love how this game fully embraces embraces some of its absurd moments where you just gotta love it. The one thing that got me really hooked on Yakuza 0 was the minigame. Now there is this big minigame for the Cabaret Club, and I found myself really addicted. Now this one's played with Majima, but if you go to Kiriko's side, there's a real estate minigame, which I didn't like it as much as the Cabaret Club. Overall, Yakuza 0 is the perfect prequel in my opinion, gives us a much needed backstory for some of the characters, and it lays the groundwork for the Yakuza series going on forward. Next on the list is Trails of Cold Steel. Now I talked about this recently because I recently picked up the first one. Now I know there will be some comments saying which game they should start with. Honestly, Cold Steel is my first one, but from what I heard, start with the beginning of a new saga, whether it be Sky, Cold Steel, or Daybreak. Anyways, Cold Steel is just like many other Kiseki games in the past, where you fight in a mix of turn-based and strategy combat. You have the ability to move around the battlefield and choose from a variety of different abilities and magic. Personally, I still have a lot to learn when it comes to the gameplay. It was kind of difficult in the beginning, but then I realized the whole thing of the game is to manipulate your enemies. You're gonna want to know how to delay or advance turns, and so far that really helped me a lot. I was getting bodied left and right on normal mode, but then I learned turn manipulation is the key to everything, and from that point on, smooth sailing. Mechanics aside though, the biggest difference between past Kiseki games is the fact that you are in this new school setting. You control Rin in this military academy, and you gotta navigate Class 7, which is a newly formed class, and the class must work together to fulfill their goals. And as you would imagine, there's a lot of day-to-day drama and class shenanigans. I decided to add this game because it's a good start. It's the start for me, and I'm enjoying it so far. It does have a slow burn to it, and I've heard a lot of people say it takes time to really ramp up, so I'm excited for that, but currently I'm just having a good time. Next on the list is Persona 3 Reload. I highly recommend Persona 3 Reload because it improves on a lot of things from the original. If you guys don't know, Persona 3 Reload is a remake of the Persona 3 game. And if you ask me, it's way better than the original. Don't let other hipsters on the internet tell you otherwise. Persona 3 is like any Persona game. It tackles one theme and hones in on it. For Persona 3's case, it is death, and knowing that death is inevitable. Although it might seem dark, the characters are very lovable, and they learn little by little to enjoy life because of the inevitability of death. And it's honestly one of the most meaningful JRPGs there is to date. I haven't really heard of a game that tackles the theme of death and does it in a more positive spin. And honestly, I can really vibe with the themes of learning how to just live your life and not waste time on BS, because you do have a limited time on this earth. So you might as well spend it doing something nice. Now the game does center on a group of high schoolers, with your protagonist being one of them. But they are different because they have the power to summon personas. Now this persona is often a mythology or story-based persona that encapsulates what the character is about. Now this game is a faithful remake to the original when it comes to the story. They must use their power to traverse the dark hour, which is a mysterious time period between midnight and the next day. And the main thing that you're going to be doing is traveling through Tartarus, which is a big maze that grows out of their school during the night. And throughout Tartarus, there's a bunch of shadows, which is the enemies of the game that you have to fight through. Now I mentioned before, this game is a faithful remake to the original, but in the gameplay department, it improves on a lot of things. Overall, I love Persona 3. I've recommended it a ton in my previous videos, and I'm gonna recommend it here. It is a good addition to your JRPG collection for the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Last game on this list is Nier Replicant. Now, Nier Replicant is more of an experience than anything else. I mean, it's still a game and a very fun one. The gameplay is action-based and it's very addicting. The gameplay loop is very solid. Now, the story of Nier Replicant is, it's very sad, but like it hits you really hard because it does leave an impact. I remember when I finished playing it and I was just like, I just felt hollow. Now, I'm gonna be as vague as possible so I don't spoil you, because this game is too good to just be spoiled by my mouth. So, now Nier Replicant is actually a remake of the original Nier. So you start off in this very cozy looking village, but your sister Yona is very sick, and there's nothing much Brother Nier could do about it except try to make her as comfortable as possible, until he encounters this book called Grimoire Weiss. Now, there's this whole story story around it, and that's pretty much where your adventure starts when you encounter the book. So not only is this important story-wise, but it's actually important gameplay-wise, because having the book with you is the only way you can use magic in this world. One of the main complaints in the original game was that the gameplay was too stilted and not really good. So in Nier Replicant, they overhauled the gameplay where it's nice and smooth, and it plays a lot like Nier Automata. So with your new sidekick book in hand, off to your adventure to find a cure for Yona. Of course, that is the vaguest way I could explain the story without spoiling stuff. This is not a very traditional hero and villain kind of dynamic. This game is a bunch of gray in between. It constantly makes you question if what you're doing is the right thing to do, and if it is the right thing to do, should you still do it? So I highly recommend Nier Replicant. It is very, very fun, and the story is honestly really impactful. It's an experience. Alrighty, so that is it for today's video. If you liked them, please hit that like button and tell me in the comments down below what games you recommend for the PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5. I would love to hear it and get some suggestions. If you love this video and want to see more, then please hit that subscribe button. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and as always, play a good game. Peace.